Welcome back to Karateng Garahe. This time, Hubert and I tackle Basai. After years of not doing kata, I realized I forgot large chunks of the kata. So what I did was I simply went over the movements and sequence without thinking of it as a performance. Nga ba susunod dito?
Kunin mo na muna yung sequence kung saan ka lagi nagkakamali. Di ba yung end na sabi mo, meron kang nakakamali na move. So gawin mo muna mga 5 times yun hanggang doon bago mo idikit yung next sequence. I'm pretty sure if you're going back to kata like me, after some time, you'll forget sequences of the kata. Usually you'll make a mistake on transition because the mind on the average remembers things in chunks of 5. So instead of trying to push through the entire kata, I suggest that you simply repeat the transitional movement where you made the mistake. You will most likely remember the rest and the chunks of movements once you get over that bridge.
What I noticed was at first, if I pay attention to my hands, I completely forget the finer points of the foot movement. And in reverse, when concentrating on the foot movement, I lose the finer points of the hand movements.
Well, the good thing is that you will be able to remember the sequence in around half a session, provided that you were already proficient in it. Probably even less. The good thing nowadays is that there's the internet to remind you and to guide you. My suggestion, even for beginners, is you start feeling moving from the ground and shifting the weight from the center, or what we call the hara. So usually once you get the sequence going, you got the shifting, weight and rootedness, plus the breathing, down pat. Everything together, similar to what you do for your competition kata. Our suggestion is that you first go through your bunkai and do a 2-man drill, just to find out from your perspective how you're going to use the logic of the movement for real self-defense encounters.
Some of the applications, you have to know tuite and kyusho. If you do not know the traditional application of the kata, meaning the original jutsu application of the kata and not the physical education counterpart, you try to apply and experiment the principles on an actual opponent or on a partner.
And the principles that will guide you, as we mentioned in the previous video, it's already there in the Bunkai video, what is contained in the Bubishi. There are around 11 general principles, but I read that some styles have additional supplemental principles, but basically from those principles you'll be able to derive a pretty good application or breakdown rather of the kata.
What you'll notice if done right is based on your own height, based on your weight. Some of the applications will change from one practitioner to another. In mastering the kata, you will have to make the kata work for you. It's not the other way around. It's not a performance. It's like a drill. So, in our case, if you notice our kata, once we got the applications right already, or our personal applications right already, automatically, our performance of the kata will change. It won't be a standard kata performance. It becomes a drill. It becomes shadow boxing.
Once you do the 2-man drill and apply the principles of bunkai or disassembling the kata or breaking it down, you will find out certain body principles. And based on your size, the size of your opponent, and based on the principles of the kata or what the kata emphasizes, you will discover certain techniques. And these personal techniques are called oyo bunkai, meaning to say your interpretation of how the kata is used.
In the end, you must personalize the kata movement and make it your own. It becomes a drill and not a performance.
A big difference in training it for real application. You're training your internal body movement, so the concentration is in developing the sequence of movements, and at the same time the internal musculature, movement, breathing, moving as one, finding the power to actually use the kata. Instead of emphasizing on kime, which is focusing for performance, you actually imagine throwing the power forward instead of just focusing it so that your hand will stop.
I also notice it. If you base your application on Tsuki, it's different if you base your application on grapplings and locks. Because in grapplings and locks, you don't necessarily have to make it fast. That's why my kata, compared to Hubert's kata, is a bit different. Because his application is more based on Kyusho, whereas mine is more based on locks.
The difference in the way we do kata is that we train it with combat in mind. This leads to a different emphasis than doing it for competition. For example, in competition, my mind is preoccupied by executing the kata for performance. So that means I do the kata based on an agreed standard, the aim being the perfection of the movement. Therefore, naturally, this leads to an emphasis on kime and kiai. However, since I use kata to train for combat, I do not emphasize too much on kime, which is focusing your muscles or stopping it short, so you contract your muscles towards the central axis of your forearm. I do not emphasize so much on kime, which is focus, but rather on chinkuchi, which is explosive power generation. My mind is concentrated on getting the force from the ground, my bone alignment, my muscle contraction, efficient breathing, and how I can generate the maximum amount of force as efficiently as possible. I also do not use too much kiai, if ever. This is to conserve the breath power and maintain internal pressure, both for protection against blows and so that I can direct the pneumatic force within my body towards the movement of my arms, whether to execute a strike or a block or an imaginary throw. At this phase, I'm more concentrated on training my limbic system rather than thinking of showing my movement to an audience. I'll now focus on imagining opponents as I do the kata. This is informed by my bunkai practice. So definitely, the emphasis on the kata will be slightly different from the standard kata. At this point, I'm starting to make the kata my kata.
Nice.